order and get started. Let's do a quick roll call. Chad Van Handel.
Here.
Perfect. And off mute. Alderman Brian Johnson.
Here.
Jim Blumrick. Jim, are you there? I can see you, Jim, but I can't hear you.
Give a wave.
There he is. And Matt Schuler is here. So we've got all members present. Why don't we move to the next agenda item, which is the approval of the agenda for today's meeting, the April 13th meeting of the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund Committee. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion from Chad. Second, was that you, Brian?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Motion from Chad and a second from Brian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. With that, then let's move to the next item, which is approval of minutes from the January 30th meeting of the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund Committee. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Move to approve, Johnson.
Brian, move to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Chad.
Second from Chad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. Let's move into regular order of business. With the first item is discussion and possible action regarding creating a new revolving loan program for small business pandemic relief. And I think, Wendy, you are probably going to fill us in on that area.
Yeah, I'll take that one. As you can see by the agenda that we have had some calls and would like to try and figure out a way to get some of our funds out into the hands of some small businesses. We see that our revolving loan fund, as long as we meet the requirements that are laid out by HUD, that we could create a separate, we'd like to ask the committee to create a separate loan fund and take roughly $100,000 that we have in funds and put them into a separate grant program called a Community Development Block Grant, a small business pandemic relief fund. And so that's what we're bringing before the committee.
Where does that funds come from? Because I saw it said reallocate, and I'm assuming where it's coming from, but I want to make sure that I know.
Absolutely. So what I'd like to the committee is these funds are coming from our HUD account, so the Housing and Urban Development Program. It's funds that we get through our CDBG funds, our block grant funds.
So we're not specifically talking about the funds that the revolving loan committee is working with today.
Account, we'd like to peel some of the dollars out of that account into a pandemic relief fund.
Okay. And do you see any trade-offs that we're creating in doing that, Wendy?
I have 3 revolving loans currently active that all are interested in continuing their application. So the $100,000 that we do not have applied for at this point, I see that it would be okay to allocate that to some other program since we've been pretty active with that, and I'm not getting a lot of other applications at this time.
Okay. And we could still cover the 3 that are in motion then?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's interesting. And those 3 are still, even with everything that's going on, are interested in moving forward?
Pretty much. There is one that may, I just spoke with him 10 minutes before the meeting, and I will follow up with him. But if that is the case, I was going to ask the committee to consider those funds as well.
Okay. And if in this particular item, we approve doing that, in the next agenda item, we would actually talk about the terms and conditions that would manage that fund. So they're two separate decisions.
I thought so. One should be, do we want to create a fund? And if we do want to, I drafted some documents after looking at a number of other municipalities and talking to the HUD representative and other community development directors in other communities, what they're doing, and drafted some documents for a potential program.
Okay. And Brian, if I recall correctly, at the last RDA meeting a couple of weeks ago, I think you had inserted, I don't know if it's verbatim to essentially this, but in spirit, I think it was quite similar to this. Is that correct?
Well, and I think that's exactly what this is. So this was a communication that I had submitted requesting the city to exhaust all available funding sources, or at least identify available funding sources for this particular program. It sounds like this HUD fund is the one that our team has identified. One of the other funds that I had asked staff to take a look at was the city's ability to borrow from the Wisconsin Trust Fund, which we have talked about with our finance director, and she has indicated that that is an allowable use of the Wisconsin Trust Fund. The real big difference between that and this one's obviously grant funding from the federal government that we're looking to reallocate. However, it comes with a lot of strings. And that is my one concern with this particular loan fund, especially the way that it holds on to the job retention and creation requirements for a loan that in my mind ought to be much simpler and very quick and turnkey. If we were to borrow money from the Wisconsin Trust Fund, that key difference is that the city basically would take out a bond. So we're borrowing that money and then we're loaning it back to businesses. So there's some inherent risk involved with that, but I would say no different than the same level of risk that we assume when we borrow from that for neighborhood enhancement. That's right now one of the primary ways that we use that particular fund is that we do borrow for neighborhood enhancement funds because it gives us unrestricted access to that funding mechanism. So that when we do neighborhood enhancements that maybe a lot of times block grant would not qualify for, we can use neighborhood enhancement funds in those areas. So I could see that being a very viable use. It would have to go, and Wendy, I think in that email string with Diana, she didn't make it very clear if RLF could make that recommendation before it goes to council or if it would still have to go to finance committee. But Diana did confirm that it would have to get passed through two successive city council meetings for us to authorize the borrowing of that funding, where we could in essence create unrestricted rules on how that money is loaned out. Wendy and I talked about this a little bit. I could see the merit of proceeding with this in the spirit of being expeditious and having something on the market because, there's no telling what the council might do with the Wisconsin Trust Fund, particularly once, a new council is sworn in. They might have different priorities if the seats change, but I do think it would be worthwhile for us to explore both.
Because essentially in the long run, for a small business who steps forward and is seeking help, at the least, hey, if there's one fund, they understand the option, they understand the strings that are attached to it. If there's another fund, right, the Wisconsin Trust Fund that has less strings attached, it just creates another option.
Yeah, and for me, when I submitted this communication, the intent was to be something that was very, very quick and easy. Particularly with small businesses, when you're talking about businesses less than 10 people, or even maybe businesses where, it's just the owner and that's it. The more strings you put on these things, the harder it is for them to be able to even submit the application, let alone the time involved to procure all that paperwork. And when you're talking about small loan amounts, I think easy is better. mean, what we're really trying to do is help these small businesses be able to make their rent payment and keep their utilities on during a period of transition. We're not looking for something that's, allowing them to, expand their business or take on a new project.
I think we've taken a look at this program and tried to trim it down to make the application pretty easy. We also have organized staff that we can do some of the internal reviews on we now have, I think, 4 or 5 that can do the same work that Kevin King was doing just himself. So we're trying to involve other staff to be able to make this process flow a little faster. I understand that Oshkosh, as an example, they actually take applications through till each Tuesday, and then they close it on Tuesday, whatever applications received up till Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, the staff reviews. On Thursday, it goes back to RLF committee, and they just approve them. And then Friday, the request goes into the checks, and they get their check by the next Monday. So Monday, in 1 week, they get their check, is how they're organizing their payout of their funds. And I think there's our CDBG HUD funds. Well, actually, no, they're not. I'm sorry, they're non-string detached.
When did you know, the HUD funds, we have 100,000. Were there any other sources that would potentially be available to the city to access? When I'm looking at the city of De Pere, for example, they've put $500,000 into their program, and the city of Green Bay is only proposing 100,000. Now, I know that they've got a particular fund that was available that allowed them to do that. But so really the question is this the only available resource to us with the city of Green Bay, other than the Wisconsin Trust Fund?
So what happened with De Pere is they were one of the communities that were doing a closeout. So they were closing all their loans out. We're an entitlement city, so we got to keep all of our loans out there and active. And so in closing out everything, they ended up collecting all of their funds. They have 1 or 2 loans still out there that they're still trying to close, but then they gave the money back to the government, and the government gave it back to them. And then there's no strings attached. So they're able to do other things with their funds. And that's why they have this big kitty, because they were supposed to be closing out. And as a result, that ended up with a collection of funds. So that's kind of the number 1 question. And number 2 question, is there another place that we could get funds? And I'm only aware of one other revolving loan fund that, like I said, I just talked to a few minutes ago, that may be able to free up $249. So that would add, another $249,000 to this $100,000. So we'd have to see if we want to put that together. But that would bring us up to $349 or $350 roughly. And Stephanie can talk more to our balance sheet as far as what's available in this account, but I'm not aware of other funds. I know there is some funding coming in from HUD to the city.
Yep.
I don't think those funds have been completely decided. I think from an earlier dialogue, and I apologize because things change by the minute lately, but I think that the mayor is holding that until he decides that there's the best use for those funds. But that's about $323,000.
Actually, that amount did get changed. It was up to about $500,000 right now for that funding coming in from HUD for the pandemic relief. So that's in addition to money that we're already getting from HUD. We're getting an additional $500,000. So, and that's specifically for relief of this. And that was only the first wave. They think that there might be a second one coming through.
Our representative has been in constant dialogue. Yes.
Yeah. So once the decision's made on how that money wants to be spent within the community, there could be money that could come back to this fund for loans out, or it might, if there's a different version of that wants to be sent through, but that will go through the RDA for approval.
So we could, in theory, take action on this today, and whatever parameters we would hypothetically approve here, if new funding were to come in, we could just add to it and these same program requirements would apply?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when I look at to me, something is better than nothing. And this at least provides something, which for me, again, was really meant to be sort of to help in those gaps where the federal government was not particularly nimble or well equipped to address the concerns of some of our small business community. So, and really what this does is it's, again, quick, turnkey. I think it caters really well to those small businesses. I do have some questions on the application, which I'll wait for that item. But I think, again, something better than nothing. And then we can continue to explore that option with the Wisconsin Trust Fund, working with Diana and getting that through the appropriate committee if the council, were to have the will to want to expand this program with unrestricted funding.
I just want to highlight, Brian, that the two items that I think would be the strings that would apply here are that we have to achieve the mission to address job preservation. And so as long as there's one job preserved in either one of these loans, that would meet the criteria. They do have to do some posting, but the only other piece is the environmental review. And we've stacked up some staff to be able to internally, hopefully, handle the applications that we are anticipating to receive.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's just the other big piece of why I think the Wisconsin Trust Fund should still be pursued is because, we're looking with this fund, a minimum of 10 loans, maximum of 20 based on, at least based on the maximum loan amounts, right? If people take out less, that changes that equation. But clearly we have far more small businesses in our community than that could likely benefit from a program like this. So it would be nice to find ways to do that, but.
Anybody? Go ahead, Wendy.
That's okay. We'll talk about that after.
No, I just, I wanted to see if anybody else had comments on this particular item. And if not, I'd be ready to take a motion.
So just so I'm clear, we do have a cap on it though of the 100,000.
That was going to be my question, was that we set something in place by this committee that if we do come with additional funds that we add it to this program.
Yeah, my understanding as of today, Jim, is there's only $100,000 available to reallocate with a future action and availability of funds that could be added to. But as of today, it would be $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I would move that we reallocate the $100,000 to be available for the pandemic loan fund.
We have a motion from Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Jim. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any comments? Okay, that has moved then. So we've created a small business fund with $100,000. Why don't we talk about terms and conditions on that fund, Wendy?
All right. You can see that there's a lot of paperwork involved with this. I tried to cover the wording because we have the HUD restrictions. And so I thought if we put it into our application, it made it a little easier that we didn't have to go through it with each one. So you'll see that there's 4 pages. One is introduction. One is an eligibility piece. I don't know if you want to just take one at a time. And then there's an application and the requirement.
Yeah, why don't you just walk us right through it, Wendy?
Okay, so the first one is the introduction. And this wording was taken, Krista Cisneros is our HUD expert here at the City Hall, and she gave me this wording to add in as the first paragraph. So that's what we have. And then I did a summary quick that would be deferred loans with 1 year of interest and payments, either 5 or 10,000 for small businesses. And the terms are laid out further into the program, but you can see the guide, the application, and the steps. Is there anything on that first page that you want to change?
Not for me.
Wendy, I just have maybe
Okay.
And,
Yes.
and I think it applies to the first page. So I'm trying to
Okay.
separate out as you walk through this.
I understand.
We asked for the current number of FTE employees at the time of application. A single member LLC or corporation, would they, will actually be the LLC really? I mean, would they qualify as a full-time equivalent? I mean, don't apply to them.
In our previous loan programs, they had not. I guess that's a question for our HUD representative. If you were a sole proprietor, it did not apply to you.
Okay. Yeah, if you could at least check into that, I think that would be an important question to have answered. I'm thinking about, like if you're a small retailer and you're the only one that works the shop kind of thing.
That's a good HUD question. Typically, that had not been covered or had an eligible. That's why the other loan program is important to seek.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to that next one because I know that the time is kind of going quickly. I think the next piece that I have in a row is, I think it's the program kind of lays out in here that with businesses less than 20 FTEs would be eligible up to 5,000 and businesses more than 20 would be eligible up to 10,000. I thought that was important because some of our businesses are retooling to be able to meet some of the pandemic needs. And if there's an employer that is being creative and needs to have some funding to be able to meet some of these needs, I thought it was important for the city to be supportive. So to have some categories there, and then maybe we choose a few out of each category to be able to help a spread of businesses, not just one type of business.
Yeah, just a nitpicky issue. What if you have exactly 20 employees? Because you have written in here less than or more than. So one of those categories ought to pick up the 20th employee.
You're right. We should probably do equal or more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
And I would actually, on that note, I would actually advocate for capping the total number of employees, because once you start getting into these larger businesses, they have so many more resources available to them. I mean, I get Small Business Administration, caps small business definition at 500 or fewer. But again, you have so many other programs out there that address those larger employers. I'm more interested in trying to service those small ones where access to some of these federal programs are a little bit more restricted. So I don't know what the right number would be, and I'm okay with the 20 or fewer. But instead of just saying 20 to any size organization after that, I do think that there should be perhaps a cap, even up to whether it's 50 or 100 employees. I don't know what the rest of the community.
Yeah, I think in general, Brian, I'm fine with that. Say if, and I'm not sure if the right number is 50, if it's 100, but I start thinking about a business of that size, call it 75 employees, $10,000 is probably going to get it a couple weeks. I don't think it's going to end up being meaningful. Whereas, that can be a much more meaningful sum if it's a smaller employee count. And so this might actually help bridge a couple months then, especially when you think about things like rent and utilities. So yeah, that makes sense.
Wendy, based on your experience working with businesses, is there an employee count that makes sense to you if we were to put a cap in here?
I'm always surprised how many employees are at a business when they tell me their number. I just talked to a small music store and he said he had employees. And I thought, that seems like a lot for a small little music store. And so it's always surprising how many people work within the walls in a business. So maybe to err a little higher, maybe 100. is better
We're not-
than maybe,
We're talking FTEs here though, right? Not headcount?
yep.
I'm fine. If
100 seems good.
Let's start, I mean, it's something to start with.
Okay.
Do you need to actually have us make a motion to make these amendments, or can we just make that recommendation and adopt recommendations as one final document?
I think what we'll do is make, at the chair, I don't know really what you want to do.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to note them, Brian, then as we go along, and I'm going to note that as, an amendment document. So go ahead and keep going, Wendy.
On that eligible uses, I think for the most part, I think the staff all came together and we wanted to order as, and then that they would go to any kind of working capital that they needed to support payroll, utilities, or other expenses that were incurred in a business. So we are using it as a working capital loan. I think we're pretty much familiar with that from some of the other ones. I took and if there's no other items that ineligible uses, I took that information from both De Pere, Oshkosh, and all seem to think that we don't want to, we're working with the small businesses, not so much the landlords. That's kind of between the landlords and the banks and those sorts of things. We're really focusing on the businesses. So that was kind of more the focus of the ineligible expenses there. Loan rates, our finance department and our business team kind of met and said, we think about a year, this should be pretty well over. And then we could go to some terms that are reasonable. And you'll see those laid out there. $5,000 loan is 36 months, roughly a little over $217.13 for 12 months with 12 months deferred. And then the 10,000 loan would have 48 months at $225.80 after the 12 months was deferred. So those are the payback amounts. And those seem, I think, pretty manageable. We wanted to have something, but not real big. So roughly around the $200, a little over $200 a month for either one of those style loans. So it'd be something, but not a big encumbrance for them, hopefully. Any questions with that before I kind of move on to the requirements? And if we see something glaring as this comes together, we'll bring it back to committee, of course. But in our applications, we want to make sure that the company has a physical address in Green Bay. And then they include their full number of employees and their part-time and maybe a simple little budget. And that's laid out in the application of what they would spend the money on so that we know where the money is going and what kind of things are needed. So I think that's pretty much stated. Those informations were all gathered from several other pandemic small business relief programs.
Hey, Wendy, just
Onto the application.
something that doesn't look right in the numbers, and it's on the $10,000 loan.
Yeah.
That one, that monthly figure looks too low.
Stephanie is our.
So the $10,000 one also went out for 5 years.
48 months, yep.
And it's a year with no interest or payments. So I can double check the numbers here. Just give me a minute.
While she confirms that, should we go on to our application since we have 20 minutes left for this meeting and we have one more item on the agenda?
Yep.
This application was crafted for friends who also use their HUD CDBG funds. Oh, Stephanie's back.
The amount is right. It's $225 for the 4 years that they pay. The schedule, that's what the schedule spit out as the amount. So
Okay.
it shows that we collect that plus the interest. And the thought was that a lot of these, since it is a smaller amount, might be able to pay it off before they ever have to pay any interest to us. So.
Are we ready to continue, Matt, or?
Let's keep going, Wendy.
Okay, so on the application, you can see all the gathering of information that we work through on page 1, 2, 3, and 4. We do have some guidelines, and I did take some of the wording from Racine, since they already had the HUD representative review their application. I thought it was a little quicker step for us to use theirs, since it was pre-approved. And then Krista did review our information and felt like we did meet our criterias here. So there's one of the pages where the employer has to check with their employees to find out their low to moderate income piece, which is one of the strings, but hopefully that's pretty. And then I have our scoring rubric in here, and for the most part, this is going to be a yes or a no answer. You get your points if it's a yes, and if you're no, it's missing it. But I want to pull up the fact that we went through this as a staff, and we like the fact that we added the third item, which is business impact, which is 15 points. So if a business is impacted, they get a point by saying, but if a business, the other criteria that we thought was the creative part, where businesses provide a support service and had to be creative and retool something in order to meet the higher demands right now. And so we thought that should be a point as well. So we've done some things that would help support businesses to figure out new ways to do things. Okay. So that was, and the rest of the items are pretty self-explanatory on the scoring criteria. And that's pretty much it for the application. So the scoring rubric is there. And I just want to say, we'll have to figure out how we want to bring this either to committee, or if you want to give permission to the staff to decide. I would like us to kind of figure that out. I know I had mentioned earlier how Oshkosh was doing it, where they come to their committee once they have a loan committee meeting every Thursday, and then just have it on a spreadsheet of which businesses met all, the staff puts it together of who met all the criteria, their scoring terms, and then the committee would approve those applications for payment. So that was kind of one of the other pieces. And lastly, our legal team helped draft a promissory note, and I worked with Lindsay on that. And we've decided not to do face-to-face or witness signatures. And so she has suggested to just have the executed promissory note by and under penalty of perjury and have them sign it and date it. We'll have other documents supporting. We'll have a copy of their driver's license, and we'll have also their taxes. So we should be able to cross check those things. And I feel pretty comfortable, given the loan amount, that would be okay. Chad, is that something that is really tricky, or no?
So does that eliminate, Wendy, the notaryment?
Yeah, so we're struggling with the notary piece. There is new legislation coming into effect May 1st that they're going to be doing some online notary. There's some federal legislation that's coming through. Unfortunately, it's not going to be approved till May 1st. We will get in line with that, but there's a $25 charge per person, and these businesses already are hurting. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we can eliminate extra costs and be more efficient and still be sensitive to all of the things that are going on.
Is there a reason that we have to have that notary requirement? I mean, I feel like
internal
far more than $5,000. I mean, it seems crazy to me that we would require a notary for $5,000 when we're trying to streamline this and people right now can't meet face to face.
Yep, we've eliminated that requirement. I don't know if I mentioned that. Did that?
Okay, well, that's what I wanted clarity on. Yeah, sorry, I didn't connect the dots on that. Good.
I'm sorry. Yep, we've eliminated that.
Okay.
Due to the amounts.
In
any other documentation.
Okay. In the interest of time, and I know we've got one more other big agenda item, are there any other comments on the loan application and such here? we've got the one, amendment so far on capping it at, the business loan up to $10,000 would be for businesses equal to 20 or more employees up to 100 FTEs. Any other amendments that folks would like to make?
Matt, if I could.
Yeah.
Wendy, there was, I believe it was 9, just really a grammatical thing. It says City of Racine. So
Good.
since you lifted some of that, I imagine that's just left over from their application.
It is.
Good eyes.
Thank you.
As it relates to the job retention takes out a $5,000 or a $10,000 loan, what are the job retention requirements around that?
Just one.
Does it have to be a full one, or can it be like a half FTE? How does that work?
Typically, there's no such thing as a half FTE. It's either one or none.
Work on that. Okay. And is there a verification process for that, or how does that work? Or do we just take them at the for it?
We'd have to follow up with a piece of paper. Payroll records.
Okay. All right. And I understand why that's got to be in there. And again, it just, to me, it takes the simplicity out of it a little bit, but we'll address that through the Wisconsin Trust Fund stuff. And then with this particular program, are we allowed by law to grant any portion of that funding?
I don't know that question. That's a HUD question, and I can certainly have Krista check with that. Stephanie,
The funds can be granted. It's just that this was set up as revolving, and that was the parameters that this body originally had set up, is that they would be paid back.
Sure.
That way, and we had looked at that in one of our meetings too, on having it a grant versus a loan, but we thought that if it was a loan, we would have, I hate to say better turnout, but more accountability since they have to do so many other things. Whereas if it's a grant, sometimes they're like, well, I've already got the money and I don't have to pay it back.
And I wasn't, in my mind initially, wasn't necessarily envisioning a straight up, maybe it's like a share where it's, I don't know, half grant, half loan, but the grant only qualifies once you've repaid the loan in full kind of scenario. But again, I wouldn't try to inject that now because I think expediency is important with this particular program, but I do think it would be worthwhile to consider that in a Wisconsin Trust Fund proposal. And then the last question that I would have, does the Revolving Loan Fund Committee have final authorization on this program, or does this need to go before council?
we have final, because we meet all the, always been Revolving Loan Fund has final say.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
So how do we manage the demand on this? Basically just by the score?
That would be my thought.
Or
Yep. Demand and first come. I think a little bit of both, demand and first come for some. As the applications come in, we would start scoring. So I think first come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
And on the scoring, Wendy, are you contemplating a minimum threshold score?
I'm thinking most of our businesses will score pretty well, but obviously if they're not gonna, they're gonna be competing against each other, so.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to think through is if there's a deluge of stuff and this is oversubscribed, are you then scoring them all? That's just what I'm trying to figure out in my head.
Let's talk about that offline.
Okay.
Is there,
I like that idea.
just in light of that, it just made me think too. I mean, if a business has applied for funding through the CARES Act, would we allow them to double dip?
What would the committee like to do?
If you're applying for the Paycheck Protection Program in particular, I would be inclined to say that it's a dual use of funds. The Paycheck Protection Program, if you apply for it in full, if we allow someone to take out a loan with this program and the Paycheck Protection Program, I don't feel like we're serving a gap then. I feel like we're overlapping with the federal program that's much better positioned and much better funded to address those issues. I would almost say that this is for business that have not applied for the Paycheck Protection Program. But I'm open to feedback from the rest of the committee.
That makes sense to me, Brian. And I think we're also reaching a little bit different demographic of business with this, right? A smaller business with this than the Paycheck Protection Act is. Right? Because you're going through a small business administration loan with that and quite a bit more paperwork and application time than you would be with this loan. And so it may be that we would try to carve this out for a group of folks who aren't being served by the Paycheck Protection Plan.
Okay.
And that Paycheck Protection Program too, I mean, you're allowed, right? 75% of the loan that you take out there needs to be for payroll, which means that 25% of it can be for other things like rent and utilities. Yep. Very similarly, you're covering the same categories here. So that's why I think because you have that 25% buffer with the Paycheck Protection Program, I feel like you're literally just, if somebody did the PPP program, I don't know what gap, I don't know how someone would leverage this program with that. You know what I'm saying? And still be in compliance.
Why wouldn't they apply for the PPP program though? If they, who would apply for this then that we're not serving at the PPP?
Where's that program at, Chad? Do you know?
Well, again, if you listen to the national, there's $75 billion that have been approved. They say that there's another $250 billion that's behind it. But yeah, Bank of America by itself could take up the whole $350, billion. So yeah, again, I don't know.
Well, you're a lender, Chad. Do you see this? Do you think that there should be that restriction?
Personally, I think the 5 to 10 is a drop in the bucket. That's why I don't know. Again, it's just going to be people who, I don't know how people are going to know this other than us telling them, or maybe it's in the paper in some regard. So I just see it as a small enough amount that anybody should be able to use it. Single person or 2 employee businesses that apply program. So, and again, it's $13,000, $14,000 depending on what their payroll. If they could get that much, it's probably better going that route than this route, and then it turns into a grant.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, that makes.
Just real quick, I'm wondering if we want to have another revolving loan fund meeting to continue this, because I also want to be sensitive to our last item, because I know that his is time sensitive.
Yeah, I think in the
what
spirit
do you think, Chair?
I'd be okay not including that PPP provision and just leave it as is right now, and recognizing what Chad just said.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, in the opportunity to potentially close this out, would somebody, I would make a motion, approve the terms and conditions that have been drafted for the Small Business Pandemic Relief Fund with the one amendment, Wendy, that we cap it at 100 FTEs and that the $10,000 loan starts equal to 20 or greater, up to 100.
Yeah.
And I would make a motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any comments? Okay, let's get to item number 3, which is the White Dog application to buy some land.
Yeah, let me cover that real quickly. Anthony Wilkin and Nicole Greenwald have purchased the White Dog from her parents, as you'll see in the dialogue. The loan ratio is a little bit different than what we typically do. They ended up closing on their property right away. We were going to be all part of one large project, but with all the COVID stuff, other stuff kind of coming together, they ended up closing on their property right away on the actual building. They had some small title work hiccup, that there was some people still on the title that had been deceased and had not signed off. So it bumped it out. So that's why our ratio is a little bit different than 50%, but it's of course less than 50% of the entire project. And Fortify is our primary lender, and they are kind of capping out at the 10,000 private lender amount. Nicole and Anthony are coming in at 10,000, and then the city's third happen. They're going to be purchasing that outdoor area for an outdoor patio space and pet friendly and programmable spot. But this would just add to the enhancement of the property. Nicole's had, I think, 15 or 16 years of experience working for her mother. So this is actually a real happy intergenerational story with passing on a business onto her child. That's 1,000 in RLF funds to purchase the property to the south of the White Dog.
And then that loan would be secured by what, Wendy?
Property. So we would take a mortgage on the property.
Did people have particular questions?
So in what position, would we be first position or second position? Second?
Probably in second, but the property, I don't remember right offhand what, but we're in a pretty good position just because the bank is on such a small amount.
Yeah, and I think recognizing the land values of, property in that area. It seems to me that there's more than sufficient collateral there to cover the actual amount of the loan, both loans. The first position and second.
Yeah, I would agree. That was my general sense when I saw this, Brian, that our risk seemed quite low.
Yeah. And actually, Matt, as I think I'm legally obliged to disclose that I have met with the owners on that particular property. I did that several months ago, long before I actually suggested that they submit an application through this program. But I know that I'm legally obliged to indicate that. And however, I do not feel conflicted in making this decision. So.
Thank you, Brian. Disclosure.
When do you look surprised by that?
No, I'm worried about the time. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Does anybody feel in position to make a motion?
I would move that we approve the loan as proposed, the $30,000. I forget the rest of the terms. Provided you need me to state that. Is it $30,000? What was the interest rate, Wendy, in the term?
It's 4%. I'm trying to think what the duration is.
Can you hold on?
I don't have, unfortunately, to Stephanie, do you remember what we put out for this one, or did we not do a term sheet?
You hadn't given me all the information, so I don't have a term sheet, but I would assume that it's usually around the 10-year mark, I think, for these. Or is that
10-year on property, typically 10 to 15,
Yes.
if it's a building, we've gone 15, so 4% at 10 years.
If I could, I don't think we need to open the floor, but Anthony, Nicole, if you could just shake your heads, yes. 10 years at 4%, is that what you guys are looking for?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so that would be my motion, 10 years, 4% interest.
So we have a motion from Brian. Do we have a second? I will go ahead and second that one. Are there any other comments? So then all those in favor say aye.
I,
Anybody opposed? No opposed? Then I think that one has carried, and congratulations, Anthony and Nicole. Sounds like you're going to be buying some property next to it, and we look forward to seeing the outdoor patio area.
We also look forward to it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Sorry it took that long to get there. In the interest of time, I don't know, Wendy, how critical items 1 and 2 are under informational.
Nope, I think we're good. I just wanted to, the informational piece. All of our loans are in a 90-day suspension. Only one RLF decided to continue to follow the update for the loan committee.
So that was a value program. Okay, with that then, I would motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
I
Meeting is adjourned. Thanks everybody for being so timely.